The girl didn't ask for anything. She sat on the bottom step of the back stairwell of Hannock Bakehouse, 23 steps from the street, a paper bag beside her with the top folded over exactly once. Her school shoes placed side by side on the concrete, like she had been taught that neatness mattered even when everything else didn't. Zara Ose looked up from the dough she was shaping. She had been in Busan long enough to understand a few things. That the sea here had its own particular smell. Salt and industry braided together in a way that got inside your clothes and stayed. That the fish market 3 streets overstarted its arguments at 4 o'clock in the morning and never fully resolved them. That the old woman across the alley watered her window plants every day at 5:47, regardless of rain or shine or personal suffering. And that children who sat at the bottom of back stairwells with paper bags held at the top exactly once were not lost. They were making a decision. She set down the dough, wiped her hands on her apron, came around the counter. The girl was perhaps 9 years old. Navy school cardigan with the crest of the school Zara didn't recognize. The kind of embroidery that suggested the school had an endowment and an opinion about itself. Her hair was pulled back in 2 tight braids that had started the morning perfectly and were now slightly undone on the left side the way braids get when a child has been doing something serious. Her face was calm. Not the blank calm of a child who had learned to suppress things, but the particular calm of a child who had already done her thinking and arrived somewhere on the other side of it. She was looking at the small display case near the window, not at the bread, exactly, at the space where bread had been and wasn't anymore. The tail end of the afternoon. Most things were sold. Zara crouched to her level. You want something to eat? The girl looked at her, dark eyes, careful and measuring. She answered in Korean. I don't have any money with me today. I didn't ask about money. A pause. She assessed this for a moment, this answer and the woman who had given it. Okay, she said. Her voice was small, but not afraid. Zara stood, went back behind the counter, took a red bean pastry from the very back of the case, the one she had been keeping for herself, placed it on a small plate with a folded napkin, and set it on the low stool near the stairwell entrance. She also put a cup of warm barley tea beside it. Nothing fancy, just warm, just something that said you can take your time. The girl unfolded herself on the step, sat on the stool with both feet flat on the floor, and ate with the precise attention of someone who had been told that eating properly was part of being a person who could be taken seriously in the world. In the corner, old Ajiasi, 71 years old, actual owner of Hannock Bakehouse, grandfather Zara's closest person in the city, her friend Sol, a man who communicated primarily through the offering of food and the withholding of commentary, shuffled out from the back, looked at the girl, looked at Zara, set a second red bean pastry on the plate, without ceremony, shuffled back in. The girl watched his back. Something in her posture shifted. Her shoulders dropped by a degree. Her grip on the teacup loosened. She had been here for perhaps 4 minutes, and had already decided something about this place. That it was safe. Not because anyone had told her so. Because places like this, warm and unhurried and smelling of something real, communicated directly to the part of you that knew before the rest of you caught up. They sat together in the easy quiet of late afternoon, the sea wind outside, the sound of Ajiasi moving through the back, the low hum of the small refrigerator. Zara folded a cloth and started on the display case without making a production of leaving the girl alone. She taught her a word without planning to. She was humming to herself, a habit from childhood that she had never entirely managed to stop, and the girl said quietly, "What is that song?" "Something my mother used to sing when she was baking." Zara said, "It doesn't have a name. We just called it the bread song." The girl thought about this. Does bread need a song? Everything worth making needs something to keep it company while it rises, Zara said. The girl was quiet for a moment. Then, rise, she said the way children say words they are adding to a private collection, testing the weight of it, filing it carefully. Exactly, Zara said. She noticed the girl's school crest, the quality of her uniform, careful, expensive in a way that doesn't announce itself. The paper bag beside her, which had the name of a shop in it that Zara recognized from the expensive Ennahoundy. This child was not from this part of Busan. She said nothing about any of it, just kept wiping the display case and let the girl finish her tea in peace. She was in the middle of explaining the difference between resting dough and proofing dough, a distinction that had started as a response to the girl's question about why the covered bowls on the counter were not to be touched. When the girl's gaze drifted to the window and stayed there, Zara followed her eyes. A black SUV had pulled to the curb. Then a second, expensive and identical, and carrying the specific energy of vehicles that are parked rather than stopped, like they intended to remain a while. The girl's hands found a paper bag beside her. She held the top of it in both hands, the fold perfectly even, and something behind her eyes went very quiet in the way things go quiet when you've been half expecting something and have now stopped being able to half expect it. The bakehouse door opened. The man who stepped through was not loud. He was not the kind of person who needed to be. Tall, lean through the shoulders, dark trousers, and a charcoal jacket that fit like something measured rather than bought. His face was angular, controlled in the specific way of someone who had decided long ago that the space between what he felt and what he showed was a private space, not to be entered. His eyes moved across the room in a single sweep, efficient, complete, missing nothing. 3 men came in behind him and placed themselves without being directed. The door, the window, the back of the room. It had the quality of choreography so practiced it had become instinct. The old fisherman who had been eating his late lunch at the corner table, a man who had seen 40 years of the city's weather and none of it had made him move quickly, folded his newspaper, put it on the table, and went very still. Ajiasi appeared in the back doorway, looked at the room, did not move but became more present in the way of people who have lived a long time and learned when to bear witness. Zara did not step back. She stood behind her counter with both hands resting on the edge and watched this man fill the door of her small, beloved bakehouse the way a cold front fills a room. His eyes completed their sweep, found the girl at the stool. Something crossed his face, then that was there and gone before most people would have caught it. Relief, compressed to a single flash, and underneath it, something that had been. There longer than relief, something that looked like a man who had spent 2 hours at the bottom of a very deep well and had just seen the top of it. He crossed the room. His men didn't follow. He crouched at the girl's level and spoke to her quietly in Korean. His hands moved briefly over her, checking, not frantic, but with a thoroughness that told a story about fear being managed rather than absent. The girl answered in short sentences, looked down at the plate with the second pastry, looked up at him, then turned and pointed directly at Zara. He straightened, looked at Zara. Zara looked back at him. She had no idea who this man was. She knew the cars outside and the men at her walls, and the particular quality of attention that surrounded him were not the marks of a man who ran a restaurant or managed logistics for a shipping company. She knew this the way you know weather. But she had been in Busan for 14 months and had learned that standing your ground in your own space was not arrogance. It was a minimum standard of self-respect. She held his gaze. He reached into his jacket, placed an envelope on the counter between them. No words, no explanation. It landed without ceremony, but with unmistakable weight. Zara did not touch it. For a moment, neither of them moved. Then he took the girl's hand, gently and completely, the way you hold something you almost lost, and walked out. The door closed. The 2 SUVs left the curb. The room exhaled. The fisherman picked up his newspaper with hands that moved more carefully than usual. Ajiasi had not moved from the back doorway, but his eyes were fixed on Zara with an expression she had never seen on his face before, something that lived in the territory between concern and the recognition of something beginning. She looked at the envelope, at the door, at the small plate with the second red bean pastry, half eaten. She looked at Ajiasi. He let the room settle first, the way he always did, like silence was a guest you didn't rush. Then, that was Shindo Hyen. The name meant nothing to her. She told him so. He looked at her steadily with eyes that had been watching the city longer than she had been alive. It means something to everyone else in Busan, he said, simply. Something in the plainness of it made the weight in her chest press heavier. She picked up the envelope, opened it, looked at the number, put it down, picked it up again. Who is he? Ajiasi was quiet for a moment. He looked at the stool where the girl had been sitting, the small plate, the cup, then, the kind of man, he said, whose daughter you do not want to be the last person who looked after. That night Zara sat at her small kitchen table with the envelope beside her and her phone open and the sea wind finding the gap under the door the way it always did after dark. She searched the name. The results loaded. She read them, closed the search, sat in the dark, opened it again. The Shin Organization. Not the oldest name in Busan, but perhaps the most current, the most consolidated. 3 years of deliberate and methodical expansion under a man who had taken over at 31 from a father whose methods he apparently found unnecessarily messy. Controlled, strategic, patient. The kind of patience that was more intimidating than aggression because it meant the person exercising it had already thought further ahead than you had. He had a daughter, 8 years old, 9 perhaps. His wife had died when the girl was 3. Zara closed her phone. She sat with the smell of yeast and butter still on her hands and thought about the girl's feet flat on the floor, the braids coming slightly undone on the left side, the way she said rise like it was worth keeping. She called Seoul at 11:15. Seoul picked up on the second ring, already mid-sentence the way she always did. Hold on, I'm just... Okay, what's wrong? Why does something have to be wrong? Because you have a voice you use for regular things, and a voice you use for the thing you are absolutely about to tell me. The second voice. Obviously, the second voice, what happened? Zara looked at the envelope, had not moved it, not touched the money, not thrown it away. It just sat there asking a question she had not yet figured out how to answer. A girl came into the bakehouse this afternoon, she said. 9 maybe. Alone. Okay. I gave her something to eat. Okay. So, Zara kept her voice level. Her father is Shindo Hyan. The silence was immediate and complete, the kind that has a shape. Zara, I know. You fed Shindo Hyan's daughter. She was sitting at the bottom of my stairs with a paper bag. I wasn't going to make her wait outside. How much is in the envelope? Zara told her. Seoul made a sound that was not quite a word. I haven't touched it, Zara said. It's just sitting there. Good. Leave it there. Leave all of it there. A strange afternoon, a very strange afternoon, that you are now done with. Zara said nothing. Zara, I'm not doing anything. You have the voice again. So, I'm sitting at my kitchen table. Promise me you will let this go. She promised. She was not entirely sure she was capable of keeping it. The second day was ordinary. The third was when Mr. Yu arrived. She had been restocking the display case when she heard the door. She held up one hand without turning. We're closing in 20 minutes. Ms. Osei. The voice was measured and warm in the precise way of professional warmth. Warmth calibrated to produce a specific effect rather than expressing a specific feeling. She looked up. The man was perhaps 55, impeccable in a dark suit with the look of someone who had never once been late for anything and considered lateness a character defect in others. His expression was pleasant the way December is pleasant, clear and cold. My name is Mr. Yu, he said. I work for Mr. Shen. Zara set down her cloth. We close in 20 minutes, she said again. I won't require more than 5. He crossed to the counter and placed a folder on it. Thick cream, no markings on the outside. Mr. Shin would like to make a formal proposal. Zara did not touch it. Mr. Yu continued without breaking his register. His daughter, Inha, has not stopped speaking about this bakehouse since Tuesday. This is, I understand, unusual. She does not typically speak at length about most things. A pause exactly as long as it needed to be, and no longer. Mr. Shin is proposing that you come to the estate as Inha's daily companion and tutor. Cultural enrichment, English language, general education in a more personal environment than her current schooling allows. Full accommodation, a monthly salary that reflects the sensitivity of the role, and the security that comes with being formally under Mr. Shin's protection. The last part was stated with the same tone as the rest of it, not menacing, just true. The way you say it will be cold tomorrow. I'm a baker, Zara said. Mr. Shin is aware, Mr. Yu said. He is not looking for a tutor in the traditional sense. A beat, he described it differently. He said he was looking for whatever you are. He left the folder. He left her standing behind her counter with the sea wind under the door and the folder on the counter and the specific, disorienting feeling of a conversation that had shifted its nature somewhere in the middle without announcing it. That evening she sat with Ajiasi. Tea, the small back table, the comfortable silence between them that had taken months to build, and now felt like furniture, permanent and reliable. The folder sat where Misty had left it. Ajiasi looked at it once, then at Zara, then at his tea. "You've already read it," he said. "You already know what it says." "He told me," Zara said. "Then you already know what you're going to do." "It's not a simple world to walk into, Ajiasi." "No," he said. He set his cup down. "Zara." She looked at him. He was quiet for a moment, the particular quiet of someone who is choosing words the way you choose stones to build something that will hold. "That girl," he said, "came in here, all of Busan, all of its streets and all of its doors. She sat on your back step." Another pause. "She ate your food. She talked to you. She barely said anything." "For Shininha," Ajiasi said quietly, "barely anything's a great deal." Zara looked at the stool the girl had used, the small impression still on the cushion. "Children," Ajiasi said, standing with the care of a man whose joints had their own opinions about his schedule, "know things the rest of us work very hard to forget." He took his cup to the back. Zara sat alone in the bakehouse with the sea wind outside and the folder on the counter, and something that felt dangerously close to a decision already made before she had finished pretending she was still deciding. She called Sol from her apartment at 10 o'clock at night. Sol answered immediately. "What did you do?" "Not a question. I haven't done anything yet." "Yet?" "I'm thinking about going." "Zara." "Sol, you should have seen her." Her voice came out different from how she intended, smaller and more honest. She sat on that step like someone had told her that sitting neatly was the same as being invisible, like she had been practicing disappearing, and it still wasn't quite working. "She's 9, Sol said. "I know." "Her father is." "I know what he is." Silence on the line. Then, "Zara, those families, those men, they don't let people go easily once they decide they want to keep them. I know that too. Do you?" Another silence. "Just don't lose yourself in there. Promise me." "I won't." "Call me every day." "Every day." And Zara, "Yeah, you have good instincts. Use them. Don't talk yourself out of them for anyone." The next morning she packed one bag. Practical, sensible, one extra pair of shoes that she had been told more than once were impractical and wore anyway. Her mother's wooden spoon, handle worn smooth from 40 years of use, which she placed at the top of the bag like punctuation. Her brass travel mug that said nothing on it, which she had carried in every city she had ever lived in, which she was not leaving behind for any amount of money. Small flags. Her territory, carried forward. Ajiasi was in the back of the bakehouse. He handed her a container of hadiak batter, wrapped and sealed, without being asked, without explanation, as though she had simply asked for it, though she had not. She held on to him a moment. He patted her shoulder twice. Solid and slow. "Sunday," he said. "You come back on Sunday." "Every Sunday," she said. The car was outside. 2 men she didn't know, professional and courteous, who held the door and said nothing, and had a specific quality of people who said nothing as a discipline rather than an absence. As the car pulled away from the alley, she turned and watched the bakehouse disappear behind the corner. The worn wooden sign, the steamed window, the particular angle of sea light on the front steps that she had come to think of as home. Then she faced forward. The Shin estate was not what she had expected, and she had known it wouldn't be what she expected, and it still wasn't. She had steeled herself for something forbidding. Walls designed to keep the outside out, architecture that was a message about power and who held it. And there were walls, yes, and the perimeter was serious in a way that revealed itself slowly, the cameras positioned too naturally, the landscaping shaped in ways that also happened to provide sight lines, the guards moving through the grounds with a casualness that was nothing like casual. But the house itself was beautiful, not the cold beautiful of a showpiece, the warm beautiful of a place someone had actually thought about. The sea on one side, Busan's mountains on the other, both visible from the upper levels. Stone and timber and glass, materials that had been chosen to belong to this particular coast rather than to impress anyone passing through it. Someone had planted jasmine along the south wall. It was late season for it, but a few flowers remained, small and determined. Zara stood at the main entrance for a moment and breathed it in and thought about the girl who had grown up here and wondered what it meant to grow up somewhere this beautiful and this heavily guarded and this quiet. Mrs. Han met her at the door, 60s precise, dressed in deep blue, carrying herself with the particular authority of a woman who had been in charge of something significant for a very long time and knew it without needing to perform it. She walked Zara through the estate in measured steps and very direct Korean. The rules. The East Wing was for family, not for guests under any circumstances. No wandering the estate grounds after 9 o'clock. If she needed to leave the property, she required an escort and 30 minutes' notice. Her access covered the kitchen, Inha's wing, the main dining room, the garden on the south side only, and her own room. And Mr. Shin? Zara asked. Mrs. Han looked at her, the way you look at someone who has asked a sensible question, whose answer should perhaps have been self-evident. Mr. Shin's schedule is his own, she said, which told Zara everything about how that particular axis was going to function. Her room was large, looked out toward the sea, had a desk with a reading lamp and a wardrobe with actual space in it, all which felt both generous and very careful. She placed her mother's wooden spoon on the desk, put her brass travel mug on the nightstand, stood back. "There," she said to the room. "That's what we're doing." She had been in the room for 8 minutes when she felt it. Not a sound. Presence. The particular quality of someone standing on the other side of a door who has been standing there long enough that it has become a choice. She opened it. Inha was in the hallway. Backpack on. Zara would learn later that the backpack was always on, indoors, around the estate, morning and afternoon, a habit nobody had been able to explain, but everyone had stopped trying to address. Her hands were clasped in front of her, and her expression was composed with the intense composure of a child who has rehearsed a thing. "I thought," Inha said, in careful, deliberate English, "that we could start today. Did you practice that?" Inha considered the question seriously. 3 times, she said. Zara laughed. Not a polite, contained laugh. A real one. Sudden and large, and carrying the full warmth of her chest. It filled the hallway and bounced off its walls, and was almost certainly audible from 2 rooms away. Inha startled. Her eyes widened, and then, slowly, in a particular, unhurried way of something. Real. The corner of her mouth curved upward. Not a large smile, but genuine in the way that small, genuine things are more valuable than large, performed ones. Zara felt something settle inside her chest. Something that had perhaps been bracing. "All right, then," she said. "Come show me where the kitchen is." The kitchen became their place. The way important places become yours. Gradually, and then all at once, and then you can't remember being without them. The first afternoon they made red bean porridge together. Inna standing beside Zara at the counter with the focused attention of a child for whom most things in the world were worth understanding properly. The second day Inna arrived before her, and had already arranged the things she thought they might need on the counter. Not exactly right, but thought through and deliberate. The third day she had a list of questions written in a small notebook, English vocabulary on one side, Korean on the other. Questions about baking and questions about Zara's life in equal proportion. Zara taught her English through making things. Prove, fold, score, let it breathe. Inha wrote each word in the notebook with the seriousness of someone who understood that language was a way of understanding the world and not merely a way of speaking in it. She used them later in unexpected contexts. One evening she told Zara that she thought her mathematics teacher's explanations needed more time to prove, and said it with absolute confidence in a face that dared anyone to find an error in the reasoning. Zara had to turn away to compose herself before responding. Inna started leaving things outside her door. Not drawings, not that first. Small notes, written in a mixture of English and Korean, mostly questions. What is the name of the city in Ghana your mother came from? Do they have red bean there? Is it correct to say that bread is patient or that bread requires patience? She answered each one in writing and slid it back under the door, the same mixture of English and Korean, more questions nested inside the answers. A correspondence that grew into its own small language. Then one morning, a drawing. The kitchen, rendered in careful pencil, every detail correct. The drying rack, the blue bowl, the wooden spoon Zara had placed on the counter rather than the desk, because it belonged somewhere useful, and the two of them at the counter with their backs to the viewer, working side by side. She pinned it to the wall above her desk. By the end of the second week, there were 7. One afternoon in the garden, the permitted south garden, the sea visible over the wall, the security escort at a respectful distance that was also an absolute distance. Inha asked why Zara had come to Korea. Zara told her the version that was true and incomplete. The way you answer children's questions honestly without requiring them to carry everything. A baking fellowship that had brought her to Seoul 2 years ago. The city getting under her skin. A job offer in Busan that had come from a small, famous bakehouse she had admired. The way some cities feel like they were waiting for you, which is not logical but is also not nothing. Inha thought about this with the complete focused seriousness she brought to everything. "Did you miss Ghana?" she asked. "Every day," Zara said. "But missing something and wanting to leave where you are not the same feeling." Inha was quiet. Then, "My mother was from Jeju," she said. "I've only been there twice. I miss it even though I don't really remember it." Zara looked at her. "That makes sense," she said. "You can miss the shape of something even if you can't quite see it yet." Inha considered this for a long time. Then, "Rise," she said to herself, very quietly, as though she were filing it somewhere alongside the other words. Like this video right now, if that sentence hit you somewhere. Because we have not even gotten a father yet. And I promise you, the father is something else. Subscribe so you are here for all of it. Shindo Hyen was a presence in this state for the first 10 days before he was a person in it. He was there. She felt it. In the particular way the staff moved when a certain door was nearby, in the silence of the rooms he had recently passed through, in the way the estate's energy changed depending on whether he was in it or not. The way a tide is different depending on the moon, even when you can't see the moon. He appeared at the formal dinner table the first evening, and ate with Inha with a correctness that was so precise it was almost painful. He acknowledged Zara with a nod, considered civil complete. She did not exist to him beyond her function. She told herself this was fine. She was not here for him. She told herself this again on the 3rd evening and the 5th, and once on a Thursday morning when she was arranging the kitchen and felt him in the doorway before she saw him and realized she had been aware of exactly where he was in this state for the previous hour, without having consciously decided to be. He came to the kitchen doorway the first time on a Tuesday evening. She was making ginger and honey tea, her mother's formula, which she had discovered was useful for the low-grade headache that sometimes arrived after a day of intensive language teaching. She was talking to herself the way she always did when she was alone, not in full sentences, just half sentences, the kind that existed somewhere between thinking and speaking. "Steeping, not brewing," she murmured. "Different intentions entirely." She felt the doorway change. Looked up. He was standing at the entrance, jacket off, sleeves rolled a forearm in the way of someone who had been working late. His face held an expression she had not seen on it before. Not the managed composure of the dinner table. Not the controlled assessment of the bakehouse. Something quieter. Something that lived below composure, below the language of power, in some older layer of a person. He looked at the kitchen the way she had seen people look at certain views. Like he had not been in this room in a long time, and was noting that it was still there. Their eyes met. She held his without dropping it. He looked at the pot on the stove. "What is that?" he asked. "Ginger and honey tea," Zara said. "Do you want some?" The question surprised him. She watched it land. A fractional widening of the eyes, closed over quickly. "But there—" "No," he said. He left. Zara looked at the doorway where he had been standing, looked at the pot. "Got 2 cups out anyway," then put one back. He appeared twice more that week. The second time she was teaching Inha to knead dough, standing behind her and guiding her hands in the motion, both of them focused. Inha concentrating with everything she had. Her tongue just visible at the corner of her mouth the way it was when she was working hardest. "You're pushing against it," Zara said. "You're not pushing against it. You're having a conversation with it. The pressure goes in. The dough gives back. You listen to what it tells you and go from there." Inha adjusted. The dough began to behave differently under her hands. "There," Zara said. She felt him in the doorway. She did not look up. From behind them, no sound, just presence, then absence. Inha glanced at the empty doorway and then at Zara with an expression that was 30 years too old for her face. "What?" Zara said. Inha looked back at her dough. "Nothing," she said. "Just nothing." The third time he appeared in the kitchen doorway, Zara was alone, leaning against the counter on the phone with Sol, halfway through a story about a man at the fish market who had tried to tell her she was pronouncing a fish name incorrectly, her whole body shaking with laughter, one hand pressed to her mouth. She turned and saw him in the doorway, and the laughter didn't stop all at once. It tapered, the way good laughter does, like the end of a piece of music, rather than a cut. He was looking at her, at the pot of barley water, simmering on the stove, at the kitchen, which had become perceptibly different from the kitchen it had been 2 weeks ago. More inhabited, more warm. "That smells like something," he said. "Barley water," Zara said. "My mother's recipe. It's better than it sounds." A pause. The stove between them. "Do you want some?" The question again. This time he was quiet for longer. "Yes," he said. She did not react to this. Just reach for a cup. He sat at the kitchen island. She placed it in front of him and leaned against the counter with her own and looked out toward the dark sea. Neither of them spoke. The sea was doing what it always did at this hour, breathing slowly in and out against the rocks below the estate wall, indifferent and constant. Sol's voice came faintly from Zara's phone still in her hand. "Was that him?" "Don't," Zara said quietly. "I didn't say anything." "Don't say it." A long pause. "Okay," Sol said. She was smiling. Zara could hear it. The night it broke, open was a Wednesday. Zara had been asleep for an hour and a half when something pulled her up out of it. Not a sound exactly, more like a change in the quality of the air. She sat up, listened, got up, opened her door. Inha was sitting against the wall, directly opposite. Backpack on, knees drawn up, hands on the straps. Her face was dry and absolutely still in the way of a child who has woken from something terrible and has been sitting with it long enough that the first storm of it has passed, but the weather hasn't entirely gone. Zara didn't ask what she dreamed. She sat down on the floor, beside her. Same posture, back against the wall, shoulder close enough to feel the warmth of her. She looked at the wall opposite and let the silence be exactly what it was without trying to improve it. Then she started to sing. A song from home. Her grandmother's song. The one her mother had inherited from her grandmother and passed on in the kitchen the way certain things get passed on in kitchens. A song that was not dramatic, not complex, that existed entirely in the low warm register of something being offered without expectation of anything back. She felt Inha shift beside her, slowly, the careful slow of a creature testing whether the ground would hold. She leaned against Zara's arm. Zara did not make a thing of it, did not shift or adjust or acknowledge it, just kept the song where it was and let the girl lean. Inha leaned a little more. Her head settled against Zara's arm, and she let out a breath that sounded like it had been held for a long time. A very long time. Not just a night. Perhaps for 3 years. Shindo Hyan came down the corridor at 2:20. His housekeeper had knocked at his door, as she had been told of for 3 years when Inha had nights like this. And he had come, as he always did, to find his daughter alone against the wall, and the two of them sitting in the kind of silence that hurt because it was too quiet and too full at the same time. Instead, he stopped at the end of the corridor. He stood very still, Inha's head resting against Zara's arm. Zara's song moving through the dim hallway, low and real, and carrying something in it that had no equivalent in the language his daughter had been surrounded by her whole life. Something from far away and therefore unentangled with everything that had happened here. Inha's hands had let go of her backpack straps. They were resting in her lap, loose, not bracing, not holding on, just resting. Shindo Hyan stood in the corridor for 2 full minutes. He was not composed. His face, in the dark, not being watched by anyone, was not composed at all. There was grief in it and gratitude, and the particular specific hurt of a father who loves his child completely and has not been able to give her something that someone else just gave her in a hallway on a Wednesday night. Not a shortage of love, a shortage of the specific language of it, a shortage of the particular warmth that can only come from someone who has not been inside the wound with you, who can therefore sit beside it without flinching. He turned and walked back to his room. He did not sleep, Zara was making coffee the next morning when the air shifted. She reached for a second cup without deciding to. He sat at the kitchen island. She set it in front of him, leaned against the counter with her own. The sea was doing its morning thing, pale gray and moving slowly under a low sky. Neither of them spoke for a while. It was the first silence between them that felt chosen rather than managed. "What was the song?" he asked eventually. His voice had a quality she hadn't heard in it before. Not softness exactly. The layer below softness. Where things live before they have been decided yet. She told him. Her grandmother, her mother, the kitchen in Accra where she had first heard it, and the kitchen since where she had kept it. The way music that doesn't belong anywhere in particular belongs everywhere you carry it. He listened without filling any of the space. Not waiting to respond. Actually listening. In the way she had watched him listen to Inha at the dinner table, with his whole body quiet and facing toward the sound. Her mother, he said eventually to his cup, quiet, not to her or not entirely. Used to tell her stories before sleep. She was very good at them, better than I am. The weight of that sentence settled in the kitchen. Zara felt it land and did not try to catch it or redirect it. She let it be what it was. "I don't tell them the same way," he said. "I've been trying for 3 years." "There's no same way," Zara said quietly. "There's only your way, which takes time to find." He looked at her then, really looked, the kind of looking that is not assessment but recognition. "She drew you," he said. A pause. "The family portrait her school asked her to make. 3 figures at a table. The small figures." He looked at his cup. "You were the one sitting beside her." He put his cup in the sink and walked out. Zara stood in the kitchen with both hands around her cup and the sea gray and moving beyond the window, and the feeling of 3 figures at a small table sitting in her chest like something she had no name for yet and was not ready to name. 3 figures. Already, before she had even arrived. She noticed a change the following week in the way you notice weather before it arrives. More guards on the perimeter. Conversations in rooms that stopped a beat too quickly when she entered. Mr. Yu moving through the estate with a new tightness under his pleasant expression. Do-Hyun absent for a day, then most of the second day, then present again but carrying something different in his body, a compressed alertness, a stillness with charge in it. She kept Inna's world warm, kept the kitchen warm, kept the song going under her breath the way her grandmother had kept it going. But she watched. She had been watching Mr. Yu from the first day in a way she couldn't entirely articulate. Something about him had sat at the edge of her instincts from the beginning, too perfectly placed, too consistently available, his pleasantness too engineered, in the way of something constructed rather than felt. The kind of warmth that came from understanding what warmth was supposed to look like rather than from actually having it. It was more specific now. The angle of his phone calls, the routes he walked through the estate. She had mapped them without meaning to over 2 weeks. And they were not the routes of a man going from one task to another. They were the routes of a man who knew where every eye was and had chosen the spaces between them. She said nothing, filed it, kept watching. She took the wrong corridor on a Thursday morning. She was looking for the small pantry near the east side of the main floor, following Mrs. Hahn's directions, which she had apparently remembered incorrectly. And she heard the voices behind the study door before she was close enough to have intended to hear them. She should have walked on. Every reasonable thing in her said walk on, but she heard her own name, just her name, plain, in a sentence that was too quiet for her to fully catch, and her feet stopped before the rest of her caught up with the decision. 2 voices, Do-Hyun's, controlled but with something moving beneath it she had not heard there before, a current that was not quite anger and was something that burned hotter than anger, and Mr. Yu's measured and pleasant and perfectly calibrated to sound like reason. Fragments through the old door. The Beck faction has confirmation of the secondary account. A pause. Someone in this house gave it to them. Do-Hyun, flat and absolute, yes. The same source gave them Yungo's schedule. The name landed differently from the rest. Her route on the 14th. A longer silence. That route was only known to 4 people in this house. Zara's blood went cold. She backed away. 1 step. 2, 3, measured and exact. Her sleeve caught the edge of a console table against the wall, caught the small ceramic figure on it. She saw it begin to tip, reached, caught it in both hands. The sound it made against her palms was small. In that corridor, in that silence, it was enormous. The voices inside stopped. A chair, footsteps crossing the room. The door opened. Do-hyun stepped out and found her in the corridor, ceramic figure in both hands, unable to move, looking at him with everything she was feeling written on her face in a language she had no time to translate into something less legible. "Ms. Osei." His voice was level. "I was looking for the pantry." She said it evenly. She had no idea how. "It's on the other side of the floor." Behind him through the half-open door, she could see Mr. Yu standing very still at the center of the room with an expression that was fully pleasant and absolutely nothing else. "Go back to Inha," Do-hyun said. The words were quiet and contained something she could not fully read. She held his eyes. 1 second. 2. Then she set the ceramic figure back on the console table, turned, and walked away. Steady steps. She did not run. Around the corner, out of sight, she pressed herself against a wall and put both hands flat on the cool plaster and breathed in for 4 counts and out for 4 counts until her heartbeat came back down to a place she could work with. Then she went to find Inha. She could not sleep that night. She lay in the dark and assembled what she knew into a shape. Yunga had been murdered. Someone inside the estate had helped make it possible. That someone was still here, moving to the corridors, sitting at the table, speaking pleasantly in doorways. She thought about Inha asleep down the hall, the notebook on her nightstand full of questions and answers in 2 languages, the drawing of the 2 of them at the counter. She was not leaving. She was completely clear about that. So she kept her eyes open and paid attention with a different quality of attention now. Finer, slower. The kind of attention her grandmother had called watching with your whole body. The first sign was a window. She always latched it before sleep. The second morning she found it unlatched, and she had not done it herself. Her notebook had been moved, just slightly, just enough that she would know without being able to prove it. A cup on her desk shifted from the left side to the right. Messages that were not messages, that were rather one message repeated. "I know you know something, and I am watching to see what you do with it." She said nothing to anyone, kept paying attention, built the picture piece by piece until the pieces fit together in a shape so clear she could not look away from it. Mr. Yu, the routes, the way he stood at angles, the calls made facing walls. 3 years of careful, patient misdirection from someone who had been trusted with everything and had used that trust to dismantle it piece by piece. Then one morning she reached for her brass travel mug from the nightstand and found it in a slightly different position from where she had set it, and under it, folded once, a small piece of paper. She stood very still, unfolded it. In clean printed letters, "Smart women stay in their lane." It would be a shame to see this one make a mistake she couldn't take back. She read it twice, set it on the nightstand, sat down on the edge of the bed. She was frightened. She was genuinely, completely frightened in a way she had been managing in layers since the conversation to the study door, and this note had now dissolved the layers entirely. She was also from a family of women who had faced worse than notes from frightened men, and had set their jaw and done what was necessary. She stood up, got dressed, walked to the study, knocked once, did not wait for the answer. Do-hyun was at his desk. He looked up, and whatever he was about to say did not survive the expression on her face. She crossed the room, placed a note on his desk, said nothing. He read it. His stillness became a different kind of stillness, not as composed stillness. Something beneath it, something moving through him that had no composure in it at all, just current. He looked up at her. "You came to me," he said. "Someone in this house put that under my mug," she said. Her voice was even. "In my room, where Inha comes every morning. Where's there else to go?" He held her gaze. The study was very quiet around them. Then, "Sit down, Zara." She sat. And Shin Do-hyun talked to her. For the first time, actually talked to her. Told her about Mr. Yu. The suspicion building over months. Small things that did not add up. Connections that only became visible when laid against each other. Her note, the final piece that completed the picture. What he knew. What he was going to do. He told her this as though she had the right to know it. which she realized was itself a thing, a significant thing, coming from a man who had been keeping the world at a managed distance for 3 years. "I have been watching you since the bakehouse," he said, his voice careful, factual but costing him something. "Since I pointed at you, I needed to understand who you were, what you wanted." "And," she asked, he looked at the surface of his desk for a moment, then at her. "You sat on the floor of my corridor at 2 a.m, he said, "and you sang my daughter back into her own body." He said it quietly, the way you say the truest things without performance. "I know who you are, Zara." The silence after that had a quality entirely unlike any silence between them before it. "Mr. Yu was gone from the estate before the following evening." Zara did not ask how. Some questions are not really questions. The estate changed in the hours after, not dramatically. Subtly, the way a room changes when you open a window. The guard's shoulders settled. Mrs. Han passed Zara in the corridor and looked at her differently. Not warmly. Not yet. Perhaps not ever warmly exactly, but with the specific look of a person who has reassessed something and has decided the reassessment is correct. That evening, all 3 of them sat at the dinner table, and it was nothing like the dinners before it. Do-hyun stayed, all the way through. He was present in the way he had not been present at those dinners before, less behind glass, less managed from a distance. He listened to Inha explain, at considerable and well-organized length, her theory about why the red bean porridge from 2 weeks ago had been superior to the version from last week, citing specific textual differences, and the variable of resting time with the confidence of a person who has been taking notes. Zara listened with her chin in her hand, watching Inha's face, watching the way her hands moved when she was making an argument she believed in. And at one point Inha, in the middle of a sentence about something completely different, said, "Breathe, the way you say a word that has floated up from somewhere useful." She just said it to herself softly, like confirming something. Zara looked at her. She looked at Do-hyun. Do-hyun was already looking at Zara. Something in the look went on for a moment, longer than it needed to for any formal purpose. Then Inha said, "Are you both listening?" I wasn't finished, and the moment ended in the best possible way, with the 3 of them, and Zara laughed that laugh again, the one that filled rooms. And this time when she looked across the table, Do-hyun's face held something that was not a smile. Inha looked between them with those ancient 9-year-old eyes, and said nothing, and ate her dinner with immense composure. After Inha was in bed, the estate was quiet. Zara was in the kitchen for no reason she could name, except that the kitchen was where she thought most clearly. She heard him before she saw him, the way she always heard him now, that particular shift in the frequency of a room that preceded him. He came in without being invited, sat at the island. She made tea without asking. He took it. For a while the sea spoke for both of them, pulling against the rocks below in its slow, patient way, keeping its own counsel about what was happening in the lit kitchen above it. He told her about Yunga. Not everything. She understood that everything was not something she could be given all at once, and perhaps would never be given entirely, and she did not need it to be. He told her small things. The way Yunga could make Inha laugh by simply looking at her sideways. The way she had named everything in this estate when they moved in, every chair, every plant, every particular stone on the garden path, as a way she had said of making the world hers before the world had a chance to be otherwise. The way Inha had stopped naming things after. He said this last part to the tea in front of him, and Zara heard it and let it be what it was. "She started again this week," he said. A pause. She named the bowl, the blue one in the kitchen. Zara knew the bowl. It was now called Hazel. Inha had told her on Tuesday. "She told me," Zara said. A pause. He looked at her. "Thank you," he said, plainly, without performance, the way the truest thanks come, without rapping. She asked him about the Beck faction, not because she intended to ask it. It came out in the space of real conversation, the way things come out when both people have stopped managing the distance between them. He told her honestly, the outline, the shape of it, not the details. The outline was enough for her to understand what she was inside, and to feel the weight of it settle rather than frighten her, because it had already frightened her. The frightening had already happened. What was left on the other side of it was something more useful. She felt his hand near hers on the counter, not touching, in the vicinity of touching, both of them aware of it with a precision that required no acknowledgement. Neither of them moved. Outside, the sea kept going. This was where they were. Not further, not yet, but neither of them backing away from the edge of it either. His phone lit up on the counter, beside him. He read the message. His face shifted back. "I need to take this," he said. He stood, paused at the kitchen doorway. "Go to sleep, Zara," he said, not unkindly, not coldly, in the way you say something to someone whose well-being has become a thing you think about. He left. She stayed at the counter for a while longer. 2 cups, the sea, the blue bowl on the shelf that was now named Hazel. Somewhere in the house, a 9-year-old girl who had named it was sleeping with her hands loose and not braced. 3 days passed before the estate changed again. She felt it the way she felt all the estate's changes now, in her body before her mind caught up with it. More cars at the perimeter. A call Do-hyun took outside at dawn that she heard him pacing for. Inha quieter than usual at the table, not withdrawn, just listening more than speaking. Paying attention the way children pay attention when they sense the adults around them have become more important than usual. Zara kept the kitchen warm, kept the bread, song, going low under her breath, kept the notebook correspondence with Inha steady, and the questions answered and the new words added to collection. Hold went on a Tuesday, shelter on a Wednesday. She did not know what was coming. She paid attention with everything she had and waited. It came at noon on a Friday. She was in the garden with Inha, the permitted garden, the sea visible over the wall, the security escort at their careful distance. Inha was explaining the difference between 2 types of coastal stone she had found on a trip to the beach with Do-hyun 6 months ago, explaining it with the specificity of a child who had studied the difference since because she did not like to be imprecise about things she had observed. Zara was half listening, and half watching a car she had not seen before parked outside the estate wall that had been there when they came out and had not moved. She was still looking at it when her phone lit up in her pocket, a number she didn't recognize. She answered. The voice on the other end of the line was pleasant in the same way Mr. Yu had been pleasant. She understood immediately. "Ms. Osei," the voice said, "you are very careful and very observant. This is noted. It would be better for everyone if you were less so. Mr. Shin can be reached through his own people. You are not one of them. Do you understand what I'm saying to you?" She said evenly, "I understand." Good. The call ended. She looked at the phone, looked at Inha, who was still talking about coastal stone with complete focus, looked at the car outside the wall. She put her hand briefly on Inha's shoulder, the lightest contact, enough to interrupt without alarming. "Let's go inside," she said. "I think the light is going." Inha looked at the sky, which was perfectly clear, looked at Zara, looked at the security escort already moving toward them, said, with the controlled perception of a 9-year-old who sees everything, "Okay?" Inside, Zara went to the kitchen, stood at the counter, and let herself feel frightened for exactly 2 minutes. She allowed it completely, the cold, specific fear of having been located and addressed by name. Then she folded it and put it somewhere useful and went to find Do-hyun. He was in the study. She knocked once, opened it. He was on the phone. She placed her phone on his desk, showed him the number, the time. His expression on the call changed in a way that the other person could probably not hear, but she could see. He ended the call, picked up her phone. Read the number. Set it down. He looked at her with the fullness of his attention, the same attention he gave Inha when she was explaining something she needed him to understand. "Tell me everything," he said. She told him. He listened without interrupting. When she finished, he was quiet for a moment. Then, "You should have come to me the moment you saw the car. I was making sure Inha was inside first," she said. Something moved through his face. It was brief and complicated. "Yes," he said. "Of course." He stood, crossed to the window. His hands were at his sides, but she could see the tension in them. Not outward, inward, the tension of someone containing something that is nowhere adequate to go. "This is my fault," he said to the window. "You are in this position because of—" "I am in this position," Zara said clearly, "because someone threatened me in my bakehouse garden, and I chose to come here anyway. That was my decision." He turned, looked at her, And it is still my decision, she said. I'm not revising it because of a phone call. He held her eyes for a long moment. Something in his face did what it had been carefully not doing for 3 weeks. It was not a dissolution of composure. Exactly. More momentary permission. I will find who made that call, he said. I know you will, she said. In the meantime, she looked at him steadily. Tell me what I need to know to be useful. He looked at her. For the first time since she had known him, something that was not a smile. Sit down, Zara, he said, and this time when she sat was as something other than a guest. 2 days later, the information Dohain's people had assembled was complete enough to act on. Zara did not ask for details. She did not need to understand the mechanics of what he did in those 12 hours to understand the result of it. The result was the estate exhaling again. The car outside the wall gone the next morning. The perimeter guards settling back into their rhythms. Mrs. Han appearing with tea at a time she never appeared with tea and setting it beside Zara's work in the kitchen without explanation, which was as warm as Mrs. Han had apparently decided to get. That evening the three of them had dinner again, and this time Inha asked Do-hyun to explain the difference between two things she had been reading about, and he explained them with precision and patience, and Inha listened with her whole body, the way she listened when she was being given something she needed, and Zara watched both of them and felt the shape of this family. The way you feel the shape of something that is being rebuilt, the joints finding each other again after a long time apart. Inha said hold at the end of the meal, the word from the notebook, apropos of nothing, to herself, softly. Then she looked at Zara, then at her father, then back at her plate with the composed expression of a 9-year-old who has observed something she is choosing not to comment on. After Inha was asleep, the kitchen was theirs. They had not spoken about what it was. It did not need to be spoken about yet. He came in and sat, and she made tea and leaned against the counter, and the sea breathed outside, and the blue bowl named Hazel sat on the shelf, and this was what they had, this particular hour, this particular quiet, this particular accumulation of evenings in which neither of them had looked away. He told her more about Yunga, not the small things this time, but one of the larger ones, the way she had died. Not violence, a sudden thing, a road in winter, a car that had lost the road on ice, and the 3 years of knowing had not been ice at all. What that knowledge had done to a man who had already spent his whole life in a world where trust was an expendable commodity. The way it had made him smaller on the inside, even as he had gotten more deliberate and controlled on the outside. The way Inha had felt the smallness and had not been able to name it, and had simply accommodated it with the heartbreaking flexibility of children. He said this to the counter, to the tea, partially to her. She listened with everything she had. When he stopped, she did not say it's all right or things will get better. She said, she sounds like someone who loved this house into being. He looked up. She did, he said. It was hers before it was mine. Zara looked around the kitchen. The blue bowl, the jasmine that came in through the cracked window, the wooden spoon her mother had made that was now part of this kitchen's furniture. Maybe, she said carefully, it's both of yours now, in different ways. He was quiet for a long time. Then he reached across the counter, his hand settling over hers, and this time there was no not quite touching. His hand on hers, warm and deliberate, a full and decided thing. She did not move. He did not move. The sea breathed outside. The city hummed somewhere past the walls. Inha was asleep down the hall with her hands loose and her notebook full of words that were building a bridge between her world and a wider one. Zara, he said, just her name, the way you say it when it is the whole of what you mean. She turned her hand over. Their fingers settled together. She looked at the window and the dark water beyond it. Neither of them said anything else for a while. They didn't need to. Here is what she did not know yet that first night holding his hand in the kitchen while the sea breathed and the city hummed and his daughter slept down the hall. She did not know that the Beck faction would consolidate in January and the estate would be on guard status for 6 weeks, and she would spend those weeks in the center of Inha's world holding it steady while Do-hyun spent himself trying to hold the larger world steady. And she would leave food outside his study door late at night because it was the only language available to her when the one she wanted was not yet possible to use. She did not know that Inha would, in February, during one of their notebook sessions, write the word home in both languages and look up at Zara and say, with the devastating precision of children, This one, I mean this place. She did not know that Seoul would fly in March and meet Inha and burst into tears that she would deny for the rest of her life and tell Zara over the phone that night. Okay, I understand. I understand everything. I'm not saying anything I'm not. Before saying three more things. She did not know that Ajiasi, on his first Sunday visit, would sit across from Do Hyun at the small kitchen table and say almost nothing for an hour, and by the end of it, something would have passed between them that required no translation. She did not know any of that yet. She knew the hand holding hers. She knew the kitchen. She knew that the girl sleeping down the hall had, 3 weeks ago, been sitting at the bottom of a bakehouse staircase with a paper bag held at the top exactly once, making a decision, and that the decision had been this, had been here, had been the two of them at the counter and the bread song, and the word rise added to a notebook and a drawing pinned to a wall. 3 figures at a small table, already together before any of it had been chosen. She had said yes without knowing that's what she was doing. That was how the best things worked. You walked through a door. The door was just a door. And then you looked back and understood what it had been. She looked out at the sea, dark and patient, and utterly unconcerned with particular happiness of the people on its shore, keeping its own time, as it always had, as it always would. She looked at his hand. She stayed. If this story held you all the way to the end, subscribe right now and turn on notifications, because Zara and Inha and Do Hyun have more ahead of them, and I am not done with this family yet. Tell me in the comments what got you the most. Was it the staircase? The corridor at 2 o'clock in the morning? The hand in the kitchen at the end? I read every single one. I will see you in the next story.